Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Ozicar Formula Ford tonight on Simspeed TV. Round 2 of this new season. An Asian leg to now the third season of Ozicar Formula Ford. We're now over at Okayama International Circuit. Twice a host of Formula 1 Grand Prix. All of them won by Michael Schumacher in a Benetton. No risk of that here with our Formula Ford cars in this Australian competition though. We've got a great looking field coming up for today's racing. Let's have a look then at our season schedule or the circuit. The circuit, why not? There's Japan and her many islands, and we are a little further west. Nagoya is approximately where Suzuka is. Fuji's relatively near to Tokyo. We're west of Kobe. Down here, but still on the main island and up in the mountains because, hey, you've got to find somewhere to stick a racetrack. And Justin Fewens, it sure shows in some of the angles around the track here, almost in a little bit of a valley between some mountains, and there's a landslip or two visible as well.
It is a relatively flat track, so there's not a lot of undulation around the place, but it is a fan favourite, and it's one of those tracks that iRacers get to know very well from very, very early on within their driving experience. And of course, it's been featured on many other softwares around over the years as well. So it's proven to be a very popular track, very draft reliant with that big long stretch between turns 4 and 5. Going to be very, very critical. Nice tight and twisty part through 6, 7, 8 and 9. You've got to get that really, really right to secure a good lap. And of course, that run out of the final corner down to the finish line is going to be critical to getting a good run, particularly here in this qualifying session.
So, the grid ready for the first race. John Merritt, he's back and he's on pole, but by only a James Bond thousandths of a second ahead of Stuart Vaughan. James Chastanoff and Adrian Sarkis are the second row. And again, you can see these times still oh so close from qualifying. Just hundredths and tenths of a second to separate the first couple rows of our grid, with Brody Shepherd and Jacob Wallmeyer 5th and 6th. Sean Doyle starts in 7th alongside Adrian Duke, and then Dennis Hancock, Nathan Verney, Warren Davis and Tony Baker to the top 12. Aaron Friend, Warren Henry, Darren Shannon, John Snell, Brennan Neal and Ira Felberg 18th. And then the last driver to qualify, Jordan Dakin, and Jason Fewens, I'm not sure is going to be turning too many laps.
Now, it'd be a bit hard to turn some laps from up in the commentary box, but it's the only way I could get into the session, so I'm here nonetheless. But pretty healthy grid, some very fast names spread throughout the front park as well as the mid part of the pack, and some of those consistent drivers towards the back of the field. Ira Felberg's proven himself over the course of the previous seasons. He's put in some really good results by just keeping his nose clean. So between him and Warren Henry, I'd expect them to make their way up through the field over the course of tonight as well.
This is our format, 2 20-minute races, and as in last season, we've replaced the 4 tyre change compound section with just a straight drive-through. But here at Okayama, that's always a little interesting as well. There will still be some differentiation between the pit stop times when they choose to take them in this 2-race night format. We have some others that are sort of 3 15-minute races with no pit stops or anything like that. This is our sort of in between with the 20-minute races. They're almost all lined up on the grid. There's one driver who's not, and that delays our gridding procedure, Jason. But we are shortly ready to go with the green flag waving. Your pole sitter on the grippy side of the racetrack, but the outside for turn number 1. John Merritt still gets away very, very cleanly. So does the whole rest of the field in these Formula Fords. But you can see Stuart Vaughan, he's right there, ready to put some pressure on in this 20-minute race. Not many moves through the field. Everyone getting a relatively clean getaway, except for Adrian Duke, who's been off at the outside of turn 1. He's at the tail of the field now as the pressure ramps up on the leader.
Yeah, very quickly, all these drivers got into single file, particularly down through turn number 1. See a little bit of dirt on the circuit as well. So if any of these drivers find themselves off the racing line, they could find themselves in all sorts of trouble, losing a heap of grip. But out the front at the moment, it's the Pulse Tuning Toyota Echuca vehicle of 164. John Merritt out leading our way, but of course a couple of those Daytona cars are very distinctive, blue, yellow and red, sitting there in the pipelines as well. We see Stuart Vaughan under brakes go the long way around the outside on the first lap, so feeling pretty comfortable with warm tyres halfway through lap number 1. He feels more comfortable leading this little battle than sitting back in second place at the moment, so good start for car 22.
Interesting how that move around the outside suggests there is plenty of slipstream down that back straight that you can confidently get past either side of the road, rather than the driver on the inside being able to defend that cambered banked hairpin and maintain their position. Little dicing further back through the field here. Warren Davis got Ira Felberg behind and John Snell in front as they then head downhill through these final couple of corners. Pit entry on the inside there, and hey, there goes someone for it. So we'll keep an eye on how the pit strategy plays out across both races. But if you're out front, you probably want to go long out front. It's those drivers like Adrian Duke with a rough start to the race who might take a strategy like this. Oh, 2 cars are off on the outside of turn 1. Darren Shannon. And who's he made contact with? Is that Ira Felberg? No, Jordan Dakin.
Yeah, and the one of our new drivers in the sick lids livery as he resets back to the pits, and you can see just Adrian Duke exiting the pit lane, completing his one compulsory pit stop, so his pit lane pass, so to speak. So after that incident on turn 1, he was caught out with no draft benefit, so he's got nothing to lose by diving into that pit and getting that done.
Just a massive difference in braking point. And yeah, driver behind just driving straight into the back of the driver in front, for which there really aren't too many excuses that will fly.
It was a pretty hard hit into the braking zone there, and just Darren Shannon might have been on the brakes a little bit earlier than what Jordan expected, or Jordan missed his braking zone, but definitely car contact there. We can see more action in the background, big puff of smoke as car 29 Aaron Friend, another one of our new drivers tonight, coming to terms with the conditions of the Formula Ford. But it looks like 4 wheels are still on the wagon. There's no damage done then, and he continues on without too much drama.
Good 1994, 1995 spec retro livery on there, though, with the Leighton House. That's period-corrected Grand Prix racing around here. And you're seeing how close the front of the pack is. But here's what happened, friend. Okay, yeah, just lost the rear, turning in very aggressively. No real contact with the grass or anything that can happen. James Chastanoff makes a move in turn 1, up into second place behind Stuart Vaughan, who's leading the way. His first 2 corners almost function like a little bit of an S's. Look at how many drivers have opted to take their run through pit lane this time around. Dennis Hancock, Warren Henry, Aaron Friend, and Darren Shannon. Not our leaders yet, though. And there's a 9-car group at the lead, and they're staying very, very densely packed still. This is the view from John Merritt, pole sitter, now back in third. Atwood curve there, uphill. Very shallow on the exit is typically the best line for whatever reason. Something to do with the elevation on the exit, more grip to the inside.
Yeah, so John Merritt getting a real good draft run down this back straight. Feels the confidence to maybe stick his nose down the inside and give James Chastanoff something to think about, but he does have the company of Adrian Sarkis behind himself as well. And of course, Jacob Wallmeyer sitting there currently in P5. He's our fastest lap holder of the race so far. It is only early days. But like you said, Dave, 9 cars in this little battle pack at the moment, nose to tail. So one little mistake up the front, you could find yourself battling back towards the 10th position without too much drama.
It's slow, tight, and narrow through this part of the lap as Stuart Vaughan leads them through the hairpins, and then it begins to open up. Pit entry, no, is being taken by your race leader. That's a super gutsy strategy from Vaughan to jump out of the race lead and to pit lane. Let's take a look at, he knows where the pit lane speed limit starts at the yellow cones for sure.
Yes, it looks like the 60k transit as they make their way down through pit lane, and Stuart was well and truly on the brakes for that cone point. But it is going to be interesting to see whether he comes out in traffic, because if he finds himself in amongst a little battle pack further back, it really may not pay dividend. And these guys out in front just might have an opportunity to stretch their legs a bit further and make a bit of a gap.
Bit of teamwork here. Brodie Shepherd, Sean Doyle are 5th and 6th, dropping back off the leaders just a tiny bit after that split up front, and after this mistake at turn 1 from Sean Doyle.
Yeah, so allowing his teammate there an opportunity to get through underneath, so there's no point squabbling for position over your teammates. We've still got another race to go after this, but a bit of a hiccup for Sean. But I think he made the podium there 2 weeks ago when we visited Suzuka, so it was we know he's got the pace to come back through if he can just keep the car pointing in the right direction at this stage. But John Merritt taking control of the race now that Stuart Vaughan has relinquished it. He leads this little battle pack. James Chasanoff P2 and Adrian Sarkis in that Daytona livery P3. Jacob Wallmeyer still holding the fastest lap of the race, and then it's a little bit of a gap back to Brodie Shepherd, 2 seconds behind P4 as we speak.
None of the front runners reacting to Stuart Vaughan's aggressive pit strategy. Some of the drivers behind, though, are Doyle and Shepherd. The thing then to keep an eye on is the gap between race leader John Merritt and Stuart Vaughan that currently sits at 15 seconds. What direction that moves will let us know if this has been a blunder from Stuart Vaughan that's put him into traffic, or it's been a genius ability to break the slipstream and maybe break away, form a little bit of an undercut on what was the leading pack. You can see Vaughan still comfortably ahead of the next leading drivers to have stopped, with Shepherd and Doyle pitting together. This is the 4 cars that he's shadow boxing against, that Stuart Vaughan is hoping tangle and slow each other down while he finds a little bit of clean track.
Yeah, so with those 2 boys, just we saw exit pit lane in was Sean Doyle and Brodie Shepherd. That's just broken up this little group at the moment. It's a big gap back from 4th back to 5th at the moment. So really a nice little battle here. Stuart, sorry, my mistakes. Yeah, no, I was going to say John Merritt's given up the lead. James Chasanoff taking control again. So change of position there with that slipstream down the back straight. Have a look at an Ozicar.net replay, and if we see the wait till the smoke clears.
At Atwood gets too much of the curb on the inside there and rotates it around. These cars are a short wheelbase. They are very snappy, sort of go-kart-like, where you can flip the tail around very easily. And it's got just a little bit too much on the inside there. Leading 4 stay out. Once again, Chastano from Sarkis, from John Merritt, from Jacob Wallmeyer, who we've seen before do this thing to just sort of sit 3rd, 4th, sit in the group, watch how it plays out, while John Merritt gets feisty with Adrian Sarkis. They got feisty at the end of the middle straight at the back end of the circuit. The last lap completed. They came through the hairpin, and then they were side by side for the next 2 or 3 corners. So it's getting a little elbows out between those 2 drivers. And this looks like it would be John Snell going for the pit lane this time around.
Yes, it's Stuart Vaughan, our effective race leader, who has pitted, but he has got a car in front of him, so he's not quite in draft range at the moment. He's going to work pretty hard to make up that ground that he's potentially lost through any benefit of draft. But
the graphic shows the magic number is still sort of 15.2, and he loses a bit when these guys slipstream each other, but then he gains a bit relative to them when they go side by side and they battle like this through the middle of the racetrack. Sarkis has gotten to the race lead. Now Chastanoff gets down the inside of Merritt. Jacob Wallmeyer, backing out, dropping back into 4th place for the moment. I wonder if another lap of this will tempt one of these drivers to go for pit lane at this point of the race. We're not far away from that pit entry to know. I think your leader would probably want to stay out, and all of them will. I'm surprised because now that they might have a sense of they're losing a little bit of time compared to Chastanov. Here's the replay of Warren Davis going wide, probably putting a little bit more steering lock in late on to try to save the car after it was wide, and losing the rear with that input.
But the battle is back up the front. Nothing's changed while we've been away looking at that replay, except that still a four-way battle. Jacob Woolmeyer sitting at the back of this. He'll be rubbing his hands just waiting for an opportunity, because the way these guys are driving in front, you'd think it was the final lap of the feature race here tonight. James Chastanoff making a little bit of breathing room for himself, just 0.4 of a second back to Adrian Sarkis. But I dare say that'll get gobbled up here with a little bit of slipstream benefit as they make their way down the back straight. We're on lap 7 of 12, so we've hit the halfway point of race number 1. So you can see a big gap back to P5. So a lonely old drive there for Tony Baker in P5 at the moment.
So this is where all the action seems to happen, between the hairpin here and then around in the tight infield. The back straight, the longest straight, closes them all up. The power of the slipstream, and then they get a little feisty through here. But Chastanov's got a couple car lengths here that will suit him well. And then Vaughan, only 14 seconds behind this group now. He's starting to eke out some of their lead. He's been helped by a lot of drivers pitting from in front of him, clearing up the road for Vaughan to be able to hot lap and try to do an undercut on what's currently the leading 4 drivers.
Yeah, by doing so, he's taken the fastest lap of the race away from these guys here as well. So potentially without a lot of draft benefits, Stuart Vaughan showing some true outright speed. And the more we watch that little clock tick down, the closer and closer he is getting away from that 15-second gap we spoke about earlier. So could be a stroke of genius. Tony Baker pulls into the pits out of P5. So he does his trundle down pit lane at 60 k's an hour. And there goes Stuart Vaughan into effective P5 himself as he disappears for a split second and re-emerges.
Doyle and Shepherd also got through as well because they're a little bit behind Vaughan, but only 5 seconds behind Vaughan. So again, they could also, if it gets a little crazy up here up front, undercut what Chastanov, Sarkis, Merritt and Woolmeyer are doing. I saw Merritt and Woolmeyer try to battle into turn 1. Second place driver Adrian Sarkis pulls straight out of the slipstream on James Chastanov to get to the inside here, and Chasty lets him have it. But Merritt tries to dive in on that as well. All happening again in the top 4 here. Merritt not able to grab second place there like he wanted. He remains in third, and it's looking like it's flicking back and forth between, is this a 12-lap race or a 20-minute race? Going to be about the same. And there is lack of grip off the racing line. Oh,
That might be Dakin and Darren Shannon coming together again after a contact at the end of lap number 1. So those two fellas there joined at the hip for all the wrong reasons. That's our first of our leading group currently diving into the pits. John Merritt in the 164. He blinks first and makes his run down, trundled down pit lane. But the critical point will be keeping an eye on where Stuart Vaughan comes around that final corner.
He'll make a trundle down the lane, but he won't make a rundle down the mall. He's not South Australian best that I know. Taking again a look at the gap between the leader and Stuart Vaughan, now 2 seconds closer than he was when he stopped. Where is Vaughan compared to Merritt? Comfortably ahead of him, 2.5, almost 3 seconds ahead of him. Sean Doyle's gone around and been collected at turn 1. Big damage for a couple of cars here at turn 1. I only caught the end of it, but that car is looking sick and sorry.
Yeah, I think Jordan Dakin was the other one I saw dive into pit lane as well with some significant damage, and so he's parked it for race number 1. We'll have a look at this Ozicar.net replay again with his teammate directly behind him, just clipping his rear wheel, and then Tony Baker.
No?
04?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tony Baker, sorry.
Yep. So come around turn number 1 and sitting smack bang in the middle of the racing line was poor old Sean Doyle facing east-west. So unfortunate, and not the way you want to end race 1 tonight, but I'm sure they'll both bounce back in race number 2. They've got another opportunity to shine before the night's out.
No reaction from this 3. Chastanov, Sarkis, Woolmeyer stays out. Stuart Vaughan is now 4th place and has made his stop. John Merritt's 5th, and having made his, can't see him at all in the background. A shot pit delta looks to be around. I think pit delta's around 16 seconds. It's looking decent for Vaughan from what I'd typically call an unconventional strategy. No chance of Merritt catching him at the moment either. Merritt's now 3.5 seconds behind Vaughan. Brody Shepherd lost a little bit of time when his teammate spun in front of him. And then Dennis Hancock and Adrian Duke have both been through the lane. Adrian Duke was obviously off the road, turn 1, lap 1, and he's fought his way back through this race. He's going to have to fight his way past Dennis Hancock.
Yeah, Duke's been a bit of an unsung hero in this one, flying underneath the radar after that off track on lap number 1. So really good result for him to find his way back into the top 10 at this stage, still with the leaders, 3 of the leaders yet to pit. So good comeback for him. Again, did have good speed. I think he was off the second row of the grid as well. So good fight back for him, and just goes to show keeping a calm, level head can still pay dividend.
So we expect these drivers to pit this lap, and where they rejoin relative to Stuart Vaughan, oh so critical for who takes the win in race number 1. Here they go, except for Sarkis. I think that's going to be a penalty. From everything that we know. James Chastanoff is in. He was the leading driver, and where he is relative to Vaughan is going to be absolutely critical. He's in the lane now. Where's Vaughan? 12 seconds behind, 11 seconds behind, and now working his way out of the final corner. It looks very, very healthy for Vaughan as he's going along at 160 kilometers an hour while his rivals are in pit lane at 60. Vaughan goes through into the lead of the race.
Yeah, interestingly, Chastanoff just took the fastest lead of the race as well by diving into the pit lane. But coming out, Jacob Wallmeyer gets separated to James Chastanoff by John Merritt. So not a lot of gap difference from when the two of those pitted. So they've maintained track position. But obviously the early pit stop for Stuart Vaughan, along with a sequence of good fast flying laps, has allowed him to gap those guys out in front. But that does leave his teammate, the Daytona dudes, newcomer to the series, Adrian Sarkis, out in front at the moment. But the real battle for the lead is on screen, with Stuart Vaughan sitting out the front, followed by James Chastanoff, John Merritt and Jacob Wallmeyer on screen.
Yeah, Wallmeyer staying with Merritt and Chastanoff, but by going with them has ended up being dropped by Stuart Vaughan, who's looking very, very well placed. I think there's always an element of risk with that early stop about where the traffic is. The traffic wasn't too harmful to him, and so he has been able to undercut the leaders, get to a nice little lead, break that otherwise very powerful slipstream that you think his best lap was never going to get him away from the others when they could just slipstream him down the back straight. Sarkis is through the lane this time, so Vaughan will go to the top of the timing column as he starts the final lap of race 1.
Yeah, it's going to be a long, long trundle, and he'll be watching his relative, watching these guys that he was just battling with, go flying past at a great rate of knots. So he just exits pit lane as these guys hit the braking zone into turn number 1. So you can see exactly on your screen potentially the time lost. So I don't know whether he had an overly bad outlap or he just had a slow run through the pit lane, but was battling for a podium position and now finds himself well and truly off that position. That's the car of 282, Nathan Verney, coming back out of the pits after what looked like an actual stop.
Might have picked up some damage somewhere. It's the pit entry, I think, that makes the biggest difference around here. It's fast and narrow. It's like flying through trying to find the exhaust port on the Death Star or something. It is just something some drivers have practiced a lot and can go, a second, 2 seconds quicker into the pit entry than some others might want to. Stuart Vaughan's halfway around his final lap. He's got a 3-second lead here by going to a radically different strategy to what all the other leaders did. And we're going to take a look here. Is that, it looks team orders, but it hasn't worked.
That's Brendan Nealon and Tony Baker, I think, there, with Nealon just getting in underneath under brakes, locking up the rears and doing a pretty good effort not to take out the nose of his teammate.
One corner left to try to take the first race win from Okayama in Ozicar Formula Ford, Stuart Vaughan stopped early and found success with that strategy. He wins from James Chastanoff, John Merritt, Jacob Wallmeyer, and Adrian Sarkis crosses the line in 5th. Brody Shepherd not all too far behind. And then Adrian Duke did get ahead of Dennis Hancock. They're coming to the line now. And then Warren Henry and Nathan Verney might complete our top 10. Where could Verney have been without a second trip through the lane?
Here he comes crossing the lane now, so he secures himself a top 10 and a handful of points as Ira Philberg takes the pit lane wall, tries to get a bit of side draft to get a good run down. Tony Baker and Darren Shannon crossing the line as well. The last of those Toyota Echuca cars crossing the line. John Snell, car 23, and Aaron Friend potentially calling it a retirement early. That car doesn't look like it's going anywhere in a hurry at the moment.
And he's going to lose the position to Sean Doyle and Warren Davis, who are both just on the lead lap. So if Friend doesn't get going, he will lose 2 spots. He's going to try to get going. Okay, and that is the final corner. That's odd, but he will cross the line in 16th. Car was stopped and stationary for a minute there. And by a minute, I mean like 20 seconds, but that feels like a minute in racing terms.
So Warren Davis in the 007 popping his Aussie car cherry tonight, making his debut in the series, but he is rounding out the cars on the lead lap. I think they're in P18.
Yep, and race 2 is not far away, where they'll line up on the grid in the same order that they've just finished race 1. Progressive grid through, which will please Stuart Vaughan, who'll start on the pole after he's won race 1 from James Chastanoff, John Merritt, Jacob Wallmeyer, Adrian Sarkis, Brody Shepherd, Adrian Duke, Dennis Hancock, Warren Henry, and Nathan Verney for the top 10. Ira Felberg in 11th, Tony Baker 12th, Darren Shannon, Brendan Nealon, John Snell, Aaron Friend. Weird one at the end there, but can see he squeaks home in 16th, just 3 seconds ahead of Sean Doyle, ahead of Warren Davis. Jordan Dakin had a couple of issues, and we know Jason Fewens has a few as well. We'll see you in a moment's time. Stick with us here on Simspeed TV. Up next, race 2 of Ozicar Formula Ford from Okayama. Ready for the second of 2 races of the night in Aussie Car Formula Ford, with thanks to Sim Racing League's Locked On Lads Prestige Trophy badge and engraving with the No Social Hate campaign. It's been a good season so far of Aussie Car Formula Ford. Strength to strength now into our 3rd season with this car. We have had Suzuka Circuit, find ourselves at Okayama International Circuit. Fuji is in 2 weeks' time, but that is in the Skip Barber with retro liveries. A bit of a wild card with a bit of a throwback theme this season. Tsukuba on the 2000 full layout, Twin Ring Motegi, and then Okayama again on the short layout to round out this Japanese fling of a season in Aussie Car Formula Ford. I think many a driver have actually kickstarted their career with Japanese junior formulas. Ralph Schumacher even comes to mind. I think Mika Hakkinen did Japanese F3 for a season or 2. We're almost ready to get going for 20 minutes, 12 laps of race number 2 Vaughan's unconventional strategy in race number 1 gave him the win, so it gives him the pole here for race number 2. Few drivers to watch coming through the field then might be Tony Baker or Nathan Verney or even Adrian Duke. We're about to get underway. They're revving. Lights are on. Lights go out, and the pole sitter gets away with no wheel spin. James Chastain lights his up a little bit. Might see him come under attack from John Merritt down towards turns 1 and 2. Cold tyres all round. Car will slip and slide more than it even does normally. Chastain dives down the inside on Merritt. Merritt looks to come back around the outside of him, and hopefully a little cleaner for our whole field through turns 1 and 2. Off camber away from the apex. There's no grip there for the drivers. They head towards Atwood curve that will lead them onto the back straight for the first time.
Yeah, the textbook start by our race 1 winner, Stuart Vaughan, like you said, getting away with absolute maximum traction, no wheel spin. So that gave him a little bit of breathing room into turn number 1. And he continues to work on that, giving himself a 0.7 second gap, making their way down the back straight. While Chastain is under pressure from John Merritt with the inside line going into this heavy braking zone. And Adrian Sarkis reckons he wants to have a part of the party as well. Big brake lock up.
Chastain all the way out into the runoff, losing many positions, and he's not the only one to find that the braking performance is not what was to be expected. Sean Doyle also does similar. He ends up down in 18th. Up front, Stuart Vaughan has almost broken a 1 second lead with the battle between John Merritt and going off the track. James Chastain. Sarkis sits in 3rd for the moment.
So it'll be interesting to see whether any drivers take a leaf out of Stuart Vaughan's book and dive into the pits relatively early, as we saw him do. There's our first driver diving off into the pit lane there, and it looks like a couple of others are trying to do the same. Also, get that compulsory pit trundle down out of the way, and we jump on board Dennis Hancock. Makes it a 60k per hour run down pit lane without too much dramas.
I genuinely want a replay of Sean Doyle following Aaron Friend into the lane, because that's one of the reasons you might pit on a lap that other people don't. But lap number 2 begins with Stuart Vaughan still out there in the lead, 0.92 of a second ahead of John Merritt. And that's so critical. I'm sure Vaughan would love to break that out to a 1.5 seconds or something, but he can't at the moment. So here's Friend in front. We're on board with Sean Doyle in the pit entry. No pit lane speed limit yet. No pit lane speed limit yet. No pit lane speed limit yet. Still no pit lane speed limit yet. Not yet. Still not yet. You can do 150 k's an hour here. You can do 150, and there's the start of the pit lane speed limit.
Yeah, a bit of frustration there from Doyle, I'm sure. Just potentially not the driver in front not quite aware of where the pit lane limit starts, and a little bit of unprepared, I guess, for this situation.
With friends like that, who needs enemies?
Well, boom ching. I did notice Warren Davis suffered the same fate in race number 1 with Adrian Sarkis crawling into the pit lane with damage and crabbing his way in as well. And I think Davis lost a significant amount of time. So, just unfortunate there. But sometimes it is the luck of the draw. And in hindsight, might have been better off going a lap later. But that looks like Sarkis potentially diving into the pits as well. We jump on board with Brody Shepherd and look over the top of his helmet and can see Sarkis dive in for his compulsory pit stop. Interesting.
The onboard tells you a lot. That's the difference here at Okayama. I'm not sad that we're missing the tire change, because there's still an immense amount of skill to the in-lap and the out-lap around this track that really can create a big difference between sort of the pros and the weekenders.
So yeah, it's interesting. Stuart Vaughan hasn't decided to replicate his strategy from race number 1, but he isn't battling in a little battle pack either. He's got that gap in the lead out to a 1.2 second margin at the moment, and you did say that magic number he was probably going to try and accomplish was a 1.5, so he's working well to achieve that. So he's got clean track in front of him, and while that's the case, he's not going to run the risk of coming back out in traffic.
Surprising little bit of side draft there before they get to the braking zone between Tony Baker and James Chastain, trying to move back up into the field. Now back up into 7th. A couple of cars in front that he could try to catch and pass here in these laps as well. I wonder if he's not also a big contender for try to stop early in this race, given we know he had potentially race-winning pace. didn't nail the strategy race number 1. Now he's been off the road on lap 1 in race number 2 to put himself a bit deeper into the field. And okay, there you go, another car. Everyone's seen what the winning strategy was race 1. I think we're getting a lot more early stops in race 2.
So car 22 on the bottom of your screen, then it's a 1.2 second gap back to John Merritt, and then Walmire in the distinctive blue there sitting in P3. Brody Shepherd did a good job in race number 1, and he's currently sitting in P4, but he's got his mirrors filled up with that coffee bean livery of Adrian Duke, who is our fastest lap holder here in race number 2 on lap 4 of 12. So a really good pace at the moment for Adrian Duke, and if he can clear these guys in front of him, it could really open up some track opportunities for him to put in some good, clean, uninhabited times. One latte, thanks. I think that's new.
Choice, Tim. What? I do like a good cappuccino though. I go for a mocha every now and again too as well. That's probably me covered. But Adrian Duke, yeah, he's in that slipstream with a big toe on the back straight that time around, behind Brody Shepherd, behind Jacob Wallmeyer, who's trying to stay in touch with John Merritt, who's trying to hunt down the race leader, James Chastanoff, making more moves up into 6th. There is your leader, Vaughan, and then the rest of the pack.
So lap 4 of 12, just about complete. Nobody on screen at the moment deciding to dive into pit lane. They will carry their momentum through the last couple of corners to complete this sequence of laps. Looks like James Chastanoff has cleared Nathan Verney now, so he has got a decent gap in front of him. I think it's down to about 3.5 seconds to the car in front, who has just reset the fastest lap time, Adrian Duke. So he secures himself a 1 minute 36.387. So whatever he's doing at the moment is working for him. So why not keep going with it?
Here's then a replay of the move for 6th place. Closing up on Nathan Verney, on board with James Chastanoff, just uses that little kink in the road before the braking zone to open up his line, dive it to the inside, and I don't think Verney was at all surprised knowing how quickly he'd been closed down and the kind of pace that James Chastanoff is capable of. How about 3 wide for 3rd? Wallmeyer's on the outside, Shepherd's on the inside, Adrian Duke going to the inside with Shepherd from the middle of the sandwich there. Adrian Duke, big move, 2 cars at once, 5th to 3rd.
Yeah, really good confidence in the car and in his own ability, and also the braking zone there. So not easy to do.
Latte cake, but the cream can rise to the top.
I reckon you've been sitting on that one for about 2 seasons, but finally had the opportunity to use it. But now he's in front. I wouldn't expect him to pit either. Or these other guys behind him in Wallmeyer, and he does pit. Very late decision too, trying to bluff the guys behind, but they don't fall for it. In fact, I think Wallmeyer might have made up a little bit of time in that pit entry as well.
Did on the early phase, but then Duke was very committed in the late phase once it straightens up and you've got a little straight run to the pit entry. So they all stop. This is some of the drivers who carry on behind them. Stuart Vaughan, he takes that fastest lap of the race back. No slipstream help or anything from that. He's just mega quick in these cars. But it does free up a little bit more clean air for James Chastanoff, who I kind of felt like in the first race, he probably had the 2nd quickest clean air race pace. Just didn't quite get to show it at the right times, whereas Stuart Vaughan positioned himself perfectly to be able to show his, and is doing it once again. Oh, but was Duke too good on the pit entry? It's got a black flag. It's either for pit entry or for pit exit. It could be pit exit. Those are the most likely things. And hey, you've got to get your pit entry and your pit exit perfect if you don't want to get penalized, Sergio Perez.
So we jump on board back with the action, and Sean Doyle in the car 74 currently on screen. Bit of a gap to the car in front and a nice little buffer to the car behind. So lost in no man's land at the moment. He hasn't got any slipstream benefit, but by the same token, he is not towing anybody along as well. So good consistent laps from Sean. Again, well, commentator's curse. I'm going to end it there.
Okay. Oh, a lot happening at the end of the hairpin there. Everyone looks like they get through cleanly, except for those drivers around Jordan Dakin and Sean Doyle. Oh, front is around again. I've looked at the spelling. It's probably actually frind, something like that. But here is Duke looking to serve his penalty. So again, that will be very, very painful for Adrian Duke, who he pulled off such a great move not long ago to get up into third place where he maybe could have been able to fight, but problems early on in race 1, problems with the pit stop in race 2 means that Adrian Duke is going to leave Okayama with a slightly sour taste in his mouth. Maybe the cream's gone off.
Yeah, disappointing, but sometimes you just got to wear it on the chin, whether you agree with it or not. It's just, it happens in real life as well. You just got to accept the official's decision and carry on. But I'm sure he'll have an explanation at the end of the night as to what potentially happened. You can see him exit pit lane there, and it's going to be a lonely couple of laps before the checkered flag falls for Adrian Duke now.
I think he hit 62 k's an hour in the lane in the 60 zone, and he just held at that speed a little too long, potentially, Adrian Duke, to get his penalty. Halfway point of this race with 6 completed, 6 to go. Stuart Vaughan's lead over John Merritt just continues to stay at what's probably a very frustrating margin for John Merritt. He'd like to be within 1 second. He knows if he was within 1 second of Stuart Vaughan, the slipstream would do the rest and he'd have a chance to fight. But unfortunately for him, for the last couple of laps, that lead's been around 1.3, 1.7 at the moment. And Merritt's going to have to hope that he can Hail Mary a very good pit stop to close back down those just couple of tenths that he needs just beyond his fingertip grasp.
Yeah, well, you set a pretty good flying pace from the moment the lights went green, and has maintained that little gap he's got there at the moment for the last couple of laps. He, as you can see in the background, Chastanoff just making his way over the top of the rise there in P3. So all these guys still yet to stop, but a little bit of a gap in between Merritt and Chastanoff where a number of cars could fall back into sequence. Just see Stuart Vaughan, they're having a little bit of a technical issue, but he finds himself back on track, obviously not hindering his outright speed, but a little bit further back in the pack. This is Jacob Wallmeyer and Brody Shepherd. This is the little battle at the moment for 6th and 7th. So these guys here were pretty close to each other in race number 1, and again they've found the company of each other here in race number 2. See Wallmeyer's time sort of drop off towards the end of race number 1, so hopefully with a little bit of consistency here he can defend from Brady Shepherd, but I'm sure he's not too concerned about what's happening behind him. He's one of these guys who has proved his pace over the past few seasons and just focuses on what's the task is at hand and eyes ahead.
Once you add race 1 and 2 together, it's still looking pretty good for Jacob Wallmeyer. He's got Brody Shepherd behind, who didn't will actually also cumulatively get a decent result out of this round. It's Sean Doyle who's going to maybe definitely feel like his pace wasn't rewarded or executed on in this one. Just the 5 cars yet to stop, and then your 5 cars out front. Stuart Vaughan, John Merritt, James Chastanoff, Nathan Verney, Darren Shannon. So Vaughan going to the opposite strategy of what was successful for him in race number 1, but he's definitely still got them all covered off because the highest running car to have stops is 20 seconds behind him. We saw in race 1 the Delta probably sits somewhere around 15 or 16 seconds. Even just a conservative stop, Vaughan will still hold probably a 4-second lead over Jacob Wallmeyer and has extended out to almost 2.5 over John Merritt, his nearest rival on track. For on-track battling, you've seen there are a couple of battles between cars that are stopped, like between Wallmeyer and Shepherd, between Tony Baker and Dennis Hancock, Ira Felberg, Brendan Nealon, Jordan Dake and John Snell. Plenty happening out there for everyone in this field.
Yeah, I don't know whether John Merritt actually made a little bit of mistake in that last lap because he sort of lost 7 tenths over the course of the last minute and a half, or whether or not Stuart Vaughan just turned on the afterburners and really stamped a bit of dominance by putting in a quick lap. But I couldn't see that Tony Baker did anything overly wrong.
Well, the last laps for John Merritt, he was sort of 136.6, 136.4, 136.5, 136.6, and then he had a 136.7, and then back into 136.6. Yeah, I guess he just missed a tenth or two compared to what Vaughan's been able to achieve, which is just that superior clean air pace and breaking away just beyond 1 second with a really, really good couple of corners off the race start while everyone was still on those cold tires and scrabbling for a bit of grip. Same thing happens in some other categories where just how quick can you push on that outlap while the tires are warming up can be a big differentiator. Wollmeyer is under pressure from Brodie Shepherd, so he defends the inside line for the end of the hairpin. But that slipstream is mega, but only if the car around the outside can get it stopped, and it was a lockup for Shepherd that sees him run deep, stay in 7th, and keep Wollmeyer in 6th.
So Stuart Vaughan out in front, he would be getting pretty close to making his pit stop. Looks like he decides to go around for one more rotation, and then he's going to leave the pit stop or pit run to the absolute last lap. I reckon they might have potentially missed the pit sequence window, actually, because you see all these other guys behind dive into the pits now.
Chasnoff and Vernie are in. Darren Shannon is in. So next lap's the start of lap 11.
I believe his teammate did the same thing in race number 1 as well. So time will tell. We'll have to have a look at the adjudication and the final results when the points get released. But my understanding is you had to pit before the start of the final lap.
Jacob Wollmeyer has had James Chastanoff and Adrian Sarkis rejoin behind him in his battle with Brodie Shepherd. So whether it's for a spot on the podium, whether it's for the win, whatever it is, there's suddenly a lot of buzzing Formula Fords behind Jacob Wollmeyer as he leads them up out of Atwood Curve and onto the back straight, heading towards the hairpin. Once again, Wollmeyer thinks the inside line is my best bet to try to cover off this position. And then middle of the road towards the braking zone. The braking performance this time from Brodie Shepherd. I'm sure he was a little more cautious to not lock them up.
Yeah, so Chastanoff, we did see him sit in P3 there before his pit sequence, and then these guys did come out in front of him as he exited pit lane. This is the car number of 164, John Merritt, diving into the pits. So I presume Stuart Vaughan has done the same as well from the race lead.
So there they are on the lane, the group behind closing up with Wollmeyer now under some immense pressure, heading towards the start of the final lap. Last corner drops away, widens up on the exit, and he gets it just right. Vaughan comfortably back out in front, but these guys are up to speed. Merritt's just a little bit further behind. He's only going to be just ahead of Jacob Wollmeyer by the time they get out of turn number 1, and it's getting so busy behind Jacob Wollmeyer.
Yeah, it's a 4-way battle on screen for the final step on just off the podium, actually, with Jacob Wollmeyer. It is for the final step of the podium. Wollmeyer, Shepherd, Chastanoff, and Sarkis. So they're all contenders for a podium there at one stage in race number 1 as Chastanoff makes a big dive down at the bottom end of the corner. It is going to potentially jeopardise his run down this back straight, but he is going to have the inside line, so he can get some draft benefit from Wollmeyer in front. It may just pay off.
It's going to get messy at the end of the straight here, looking to go 3 wide here. Chastanoff wants to make as many spots as he can on the last lap. He dived Shepherd. He's going to complete that pass at the end of the straight in behind Wollmeyer. Looks like Merritt will settle in front of this group. Stuart Vaughan then a bit further ahead of that, but it's not done yet for Wollmeyer because he's got Chastanoff, super aggressive Chastanoff behind him now, looking around the outside of this first hairpin to get the inside for the next, and that's what Chasty does. Super move, inside line of the right-hand hairpin, and it's all right-handers, all inside line for him, all the way to the end here. Stuart Vaughan is out front. He crosses the line first. John Merritt in second, but Chastity gets the move done in the final corner on Jacob Wallmeyer, who looked to slipstream back before the line. They will be side-by-side overlap, crossing the timing line 2 rows deep, but it's Chastano from Wallmeyer, from Shepherd, from Adrian Sarkis in those battles.
I can just imagine the fist pumping that's going on in the Chastanoff cockpit as we speak. But while that's happening, there is plenty of other battles on track as well. This is Jordan Dakin. After a horror race one, he's come back with a competitive result here, finishing P13 as he crosses the line for race number 2. John Snell, Aaron Friend, and Ira Felberg will make out that little battle from 13 through to 17. Brendan Nealon in the Tuning Pulse Toyota Echuca livery, crossing the line there as well.
Like you've read the whole thing backwards. Pulse Tuning Echuca Toyota. Anyway, sorry. I'm nitpicking there. Let's look at this order, because we think there will be some question marks about it. Stuart Vaughan and John Merritt, the first cars across the line, but they may have taken their pit stop outside of the window 1 lap too late. James Chastanoff went off the road lap 1 and really had to fight his way back through the field, even completing that final pass in the last corner on the last lap. And hey, only just holding on to it by half a tenth there as well at the end. Chastanoff from Wallmeyer, Brody Shepherd, Adrian Sarkis, Nathan Verney, Tony Baker, Dennis Hancock, and Darren Shannon were the top 10 there. Warren Henry, Warren Davis, Jordan Dakin, John Snell, Aaron Friend, Ira Felberg, Brendan Neal, and Adrian Duke. Sean Doyle, a retirement. It looked like a promising car for him. He's had great pace so far, or in the last couple of rounds with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're around to forget it. He's had some highs to highs over the last couple of rounds, including towards the end of last season. But tonight just wasn't the night, and things didn't fall his way. But I'm sure he will bounce back. He'll reset. He has definitely got the pace. And as we spoke a little bit earlier, next time we speak to everybody, we'll be in Skip Barber's, and we know he's been a gun at that for many years as well. So, despite not a great point haul here tonight, he's still got a long way to go in this championship, and he still can be a good contender.
We've got a couple of our drivers standing by to chat after 2 very, very exciting Ozicar Formula Ford races from Okayama. James Chastanoff joins us. I'm sure that was a very, very exciting race number 2 for you, Mr. Chasty. What do you think you're the winner?
Not really. I mean, when you have a big lockup like that, it's kind of annoying. So, it's bit tough. I'm trying to clean up this season and try and be consistent, and then make a mistake like that. You've got to sort of you put yourself on the back foot a little bit, which I shouldn't be doing. But I feel pretty good after getting back through the field though, so I'll take that.
Surprised me a little bit how strong the slipstream was here at Okayama. I guess I shouldn't be in the Formula Ford, but it means some of the other tracks are going to get interesting as well.
Yeah, I think any track with a semi sort of long straight is going to be pretty strong in any of these cars. Like the Skip Barber, it was pretty strong as well. So as soon as you start getting into more high-powered vehicles, you don't really get that slipstream at all. I know racing the supercar here, it's virtually impossible to pass. You get absolutely nothing. So yeah, I think in just the nature of these cars, that's the way that it goes. But it was. I think it was kind of similar to Silverstone. Sorry, not Silverstone, Suzuka. There's a couple of good drafting spots and then positions to pass, and I think this track sort of had that as well.
Retro round next time out with the Skip Barber. How do you going to feel about that at Fuji?
Looking pretty forward to it. I don't know how the rest of these guys race the Skip Barber. There's a couple of guys who are doing the Skip Barber stuff. I know Nathan Verney, Sean Doyle. They're pretty good in those cars. So I'm expecting big things from Verney as well. I think he's a bit better in that car as well. But looking forward to it. I think I've had a bit more success in that car than this one, so theoretically it should work out. But it's been a while since I've driven it, so probably probably all rusty on it now, but yeah, we'll see how we go.
Any hints what a locked on retro livery might look like?
I think I'm going to be running whatever locked on livery is still on that car since the last time we last drove it. Yeah, so I think I think you'll see a little bit more pink and light blue on my car next round, next fortnight.
Just dig deep into the back of the wardrobe, and whatever sees the light of day must be retro.
That's it. I mean, I think we're probably one of the few teams that actually has our own retro liveries. So we didn't dig into the old Formula One archives or anything. Dig out the old Marlboro livery that everyone likes to run on those skips. But yeah, I think we've got our own. We'll show our old colours.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Yeah, well, James
Jason?
Chasnoff got plenty of retro clothes he wears throughout the course of his streams, so he won't have to dig very deep to find anything retro, I'm sure.
Got some other drivers standing by, Jason. Who are you going to grab?
Yeah, I'll bring John Merritt up into the commentary box. He was our pole sitter here in race number 1 and finished the night with a couple of podiums. So welcome, John, to the commentary box here at Simspeed TV. A very busy night for yourself, but a great points haul, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed with walking away with a second and a third.
No, it was good. Always like to try and push Stu a little bit, but yeah, I just I couldn't get it dialed in, or didn't really take to the setup tonight. So yeah, it was just a bit of a challenge. Like, have a wobble every third lap or second lap, and as you know with these things, once you lose that toe, it's all over.
Yeah, and of course the momentum, particularly through the mid-corner and the exits, really, really critical in these cars because they are such low horsepower and reliant on carrying some good speed. But one thing we did touch on tonight was, of course, the pit lane entry and the process. That was something that we haven't ran. Don't think we ran it at Suzuka there 2 weeks ago. So caught a couple of drivers out over the course of the night, and there were some variances in how some of the people tackled it.
Yeah, nearly got me in that last stop. I sort of overran the second right-hander, but there's an example of my bobbling going down the hill there. But no, look, I think it's a good variable just to change up the field when you've got close racing and the draft racing to have that drive-through. Sadly, we couldn't do proper stops. There's probably too much for an iRacing variants last season, but the drive-through lane thing sort of makes people challenge their entry and exit and still abide by the rules, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, still throws in another good variable, and it really is down to the driver's commitment and whether they're actually aware of where the pit lane actually starts. We saw a couple of drivers get caught out by that tonight over the course of the 2 races as well. So anyway, great result from yourself tonight, and another continuation for a good showing in the championship. Before we let you go, do you want to do a shout out to your Pulse Tuning and Chuka Toyota sponsors?
Oh, just from my absentee friend at Pulse Tuning, shout out to Glenn and Chuka Toyota, and obviously to yourselves for the broadcast, and Ira for putting the series on, as always.
So we are off to Fuji in a fortnight's time. I presume that's a track you've done plenty of laps at?
Oh, a few laps, yeah, a few laps. Where, I think those off-camber corners will be a good challenge, so no, I look forward to it.
And a super long straight too, so it's going to be a draft fest going into that heavy braking zone at turn number 1. So
5 wide, I think.
It should be exciting to call. So, all right, congratulations on tonight. I'll let you go. You can go and celebrate with your virtual champagne with the rest of your team, and we'll talk to you hopefully in 2 weeks' time if you score yourself another podium.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Ben.
Cheers.
So, second place getter tonight, John Merritt, in our feature race. So another great result for him, and continuing with his good form.
And one last driver to speak to, Stuart Vaughan, standout victor of race number 1. Question mark on at race number 2. You had more race pace than anyone else here this weekend, though.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising. I'm not feeling the best. I'm a bit under the weather today, but sorry for pitting early on lap 1 and sort of ruining a bit of a battle there, but I thought it'd be pretty smart, so it worked out well. But yeah, I was trying pretty desperately to gain sort of every 10th I could on John early on in that last one just to get a gap, and once I sort of pulled away, that was it. So yeah, pretty surprised, but I'll take it.
All came down to that opening lap there as well. How different sort of the handling characteristic of the Formula Ford middle of the run versus on the race start when the tyres are maybe a little cold?
Yeah, it's night and day difference. You've really got to watch your braking points. That's where it's going to catch you out. And I was just talking to a few of the boys, and everyone was running a lot higher brake bias than what I was running. I had to dial it right back because I was just locking up the fronts going into the hairpin. So I sort of like more of a taily car, but not sure if that helped out. But yeah, no, it's definitely a difference on cold tyres.
Yeah, absolutely. So great pace from yourself for both of the races, but we got to park the Formula Fords for next round. How do you feel about the Skip Barber? Is that something you're confident with?
I'm excited, man. I used to run those cars back in the early days, probably, oh geez, making me look old, 10 years ago now, 2013, 2014 when they were out. So now I'm looking forward to it because I haven't driven them in a few years now.
Yeah, and then a trip across Japan to Fuji for that one. Again, a relatively newer circuit on iRacing, definitely not something you would have driven 2014, 2015.
No, I think there's going to be a bit of chaos catching with the new car. Well, say new car, but the different car catching some drivers out. So don't be surprised to see a couple of different guys in the top 5, I reckon.
Gosh, you're making us all excited for it, and we can't wait to see you there.
Got to hype it up, mate.
You heard it here first.
Right, well, we'll see you then.
See you there, guys. Thanks again for the broadcast.
Great racing in Ozicar Formula Ford from Okayama, showing just how strategic, how consistent you need to be quick in these cars and to work your way through the pack to not end up in incidents. But for that retro throwback round at Fuji Speedway, that's in 2 weeks' time here on Simspeed TV. There's Mount Fuji. Where are the apples? Where do they come from? Because they're pretty crisp as well, just like the Mountain Air. Join myself, David Haynes, Jason Fewens, Jay Kennedy, then October 9th for the next installment of this Aussie car season from Japan.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.